list, so I'm going to keep bragging. Number 1 in recycling in Maryland, and number 2 in? I don't remember, so I won't say. But high, because we had single stream recycling. We were one of the first ones. Just said, throw it all in the bin. We don't care. We'll sort it out when we get there. Perfect. Make it easier. Really going for it. But to reduce that solid waste load is huge. We extended the life of our landfill. It's still open. It was supposed to close in 2010. Just by recycling, we were able to extend the life of that landfill. And the other thing that I mentioned is that they're looking at doing pilot neighborhoods for food waste composting, which actually they've already done a pilot project. They're expanding it because they've got this. They do this humongous. Gore-Tex is one of the companies that's partnered with them. They do these humongous compost piles, where there's a machine that comes along and turns it to get the air in it. I haven't gotten to tour the facility, but it's such a cool concept. That's where we need to be, is anticipating these needs. So 1 flush of a standard American toilet requires more water than most world residents get in a day. 3 gallons is a standard toilet flush. 1.5 gallons is considered, low flow. 1.5 gallons. Jeez Louise, that's crazy. Of completely clean water. Does anybody have a dog that thinks that's their water bowl? Yeah. Because it's clean water. Why do we do this? Composting toilets, I'm telling you, that's the future. There's more compost in the world, which is a good thing. We're not taking this all to a wastewater treatment plant. People don't understand how waste works. I'll chime on about that later. 300 million people without clean water in the world. 800 million. 2.4 billion without sanitation, which means pooping in not nice places that are not separated from where people live. That's how disease happens. Just too many places where this is not, where there's not even a base standard. So I want to talk about sustainability at different scales. I'm going to come back after lunch and I'll play the video that I want to play that goes with this, because you'll never forget this video, and even when you graduate, you're going to go, CJ, I remember that video. So I'll come back to it after lunch. So I want to talk about how do we address, sustainability. You're like, oh, and you've been doing the readings, right? So you're like, oh my God, this big thing. It's so big. I just, it's the world on my shoulders. So let's break it down and how we can look at it at different scales. And maybe that, can give you some comfort. And so the global scale, certainly let's talk about the Paris Agreement on climate change. Even the Paris Agreement was a 2-degree reduction, the greenhouse gas reductions that would result in 2-degree increase. That's still bad. Okay, if the new president wants to redo the Paris Agreement, okay. Make it 1 degree. Cut it in half. Because we're already going to be screwed at 2 degrees increase. And this is Celsius, not Fahrenheit, just to be clear. That's still a lot. Under that, in 100 years, which is, he just planted that sycamore tree, it's still going to be alive in 100 years. In 100 years, Maryland's climate becomes that of Florida under the severe models. Florida. We're talking palm trees here, people. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. So I don't mean that as a, oh my God, the sky's falling, but we have to be realistic about, what we're talking about. So lots of good executive orders. This one came in 2009 that said implementation of this executive order will focus on sustainability goals. I read, what did I get about the federal government recently Oh, it's Office of Management and Budget, said that when you do anything, and I'm not familiar with this system, that you have to do a sustainability analysis and provide that with whatever your request is. What? That's huge, because that gets you thinking. Is this helping people? Social leg. Is this economics? Do the economics work and benefit? Economics. Is this good environmentally? Environmental. So you're thinking in that, it helps to shift the thinking, which is great. And yet each agency is supposed to do a strategic sustainability performance plan. Did you do that at the Capitol? Anything like that?
Branch is exempt.
Well, we don't do anything we're supposed to do.
Okay, we don't do anything we're supposed to do was the answer.
Well, there's a reason they call it the Outlaw Congress, because they exempt themselves from any of these most public laws, but that's also an executive branch.
It's an
Executive order that's only for federal agencies. But to your thing on OMB, what I'd be really interested in seeing so that requires two things, is that the people at the federal agencies that are writing the sustainability performance plans know what they're doing. Okay, I'm not trying to be like a naysayer here, but then that the people at OMB who are reading the performance plans know what they're reading, and then what are they measuring it against? I mean, what is the achievement of sustainability goals? What does that goal mean, right?
Right. And can I just say, these are all important, critical questions that always happen when you're birthing something new.
Yeah.
What does this really mean? Oh, where are we going with this? What are we going to measure success? That's one thing that's always been left out of any analysis that sustainability will talk about, is you need to decide what success is and how you're going to measure it.
Right.
You know, ours was a tree canopy goal. What a simple thing for a community to do. We're going to set a tree canopy goal. You could set one for the Capitol. You know, you're probably pretty well shaded, but let me just finish my point. It's a great way to start. Oh, tree canopy goal. Hey, apple pie, flag waving. This is great. You know, which of course you have to know how much you have. And then the staff behind it are going, yeah, now I have this data that I'm going to go and take it to the next level and go, well, what are the communities that are under canopied? That's my trademark TM circle, under canopied communities. Those are the communities that we should implement tree planting programs in first. See what I mean? So it's like, oh, let's just set this goal. It's very policy. It's very up here. It's, you know. But then with smart staff behind it, we can take something very esoteric and work that into, you know, here's how we're going to spend the money. I won't go into Ben Carson's answer on how he would spend money at HUD.
Oh.
You know, those are important things and how that money gets spent. So you need to get stuff into the regulations and the policies that direct you. So
Oh, I was just going to say, I was sort of kidding, or sort of not, when I say we don't do anything we're supposed to do. What I really meant was what you said too, is that the legislative branch is exempt from these executive orders. However, we at the architect of the Capitol, we have sustainability goals, and the advantage of not being under an executive order is, I think lots of times when you're under an executive order, you think, what do I have to do to check the boxes? Because I have to check the boxes. We're in a position where we can say, what can we do that makes the most sense? And really what we have done at the Architect of the Capitol, I think, and pushed by some leaders at the top, which is great, is change the culture so that we're thinking in that way. So we really think about what we do, and we look at the executive orders and say, does this make sense for us? Sometimes we do more, sometimes we do less, sometimes we do something different.
So you use them as a guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. So the American Planning Association said, yes, we're in on sustainability. We want sustainable communities that are good places to live, with sustains our values. So happy to see the planning agency talking about biodiversity. So important. Planners don't always think that way. So, and sustaining those natural systems and their ability to provide services that humans need. So really great kind of way to go about that. Regionally, the MWCOG, boy, that could be a great, MWCOG, you know me. Okay, Metropolitan, I'm getting a little punchy. Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, if you don't know this agency. I love them because they have absolutely no power, but they help to push policy regionally, which is a great thing. Because imagine if our transportation agencies didn't talk to each other. Oh, DC's gonna widen, Pennsylvania Avenue as it comes into Prince George's County. Oh, okay. Well, how many lanes do we have on the other end? Oh, they want to have 6 lanes. We only have 2 lanes. What? The Council of Governments brings people together to talk about regional issues, which is great. I respect them a lot. But not having any power doesn't help. So that's one of those kind of difficult in-between conversations because they're a regional agency. But they did do a plan called Region Forward. If you're interested in planning kinds of things, it's a very interesting document. It's very broad, very kind of rough sideboards as to how the city wants to grow. I'm frankly not, I'm so on the fence about extending the height limit. I don't know if you all know, there's a height limit in DC and building buildings. And some people are saying the only way we can grow sustainably is if we build up and build taller buildings, put more people in those buildings. I don't want to debate it here because it has benefits on both sides. Part of me would say if you make the city more accessible via transit, that's a way to kind of help that equation along. But anyway, I also want to show you the genuine progress indicator. What I'm going to do is when we come back from lunch, we'll just watch the videos that I have associated with these. The genuine progress indicator, who remembers that Martin O'Malley ran for president?
I do.
One person? Oh no! Martin O'Malley was our governor in Maryland for 2 terms. Awesome governor, awesome. He used statistics every day. He would go on GIS, and if you hadn't updated your website to have new data available to citizens, he would get on you in cabinet meetings. A friend of mine was the executive director, she was the executive director of the Chesapeake and Coastal Bays Commission, which deals with all of the Chesapeake Bay regulatory stuff. And she was just like, he would get on people if their data wasn't up to date. So I kind of loved him. He didn't have much of a personality, which made, today, look what we got, Mr. Personality. But it was, he's such a policy wonk. But he did this thing called the Genuine Progress Indicator. And it includes indications or measures regarding public health. If we look at the GDP, gross domestic product, and we only look at that and we don't look at anything else, then gross domestic product. So the only measure is growth. Okay, so you with me? We're only good when we're growing in these numbers, okay? And I don't want to get into the details of what it includes and doesn't, but it's, we got to be making new things. We got, and health indicators be damned. So he said, this is not good. We need to account for income inequality. We need to include the non-market benefits to the economy, environment, society, and we need to identify and deduct the costs, such as environmental degradation. Yikes! So I will be critical of Prince George's from time to time. National Harbor is very beautiful. If you've been there, it's a nice economic engine. But did we really need a casino? But think about the 3 aspects of that. Is it economically going to do what they're promised? Environmentally, it's right on the shore of the Potomac River. Is that the best place for that to happen? You've got to, and social, are those jobs at a high enough level that really will promote, people to moving up the economic ladder and breaking the cycle of poverty? I don't know. I don't think so. So how do we fit all of those things into that equation, Martin O'Malley got a lot of smart people together and said, let's figure out a way to measure these things. And we'll take a look at that. And county governments, they have policies and energy plans, but not much else. Land use plans. Fairfax is their land use plan is, let's build everything. Let's build it out, baby. Really, streams be damned in Virginia. Ha ha ha, oh that's funny. Streams be damned. Get it? Yeah, still allowed in Virginia, not allowed in Maryland. But we'll talk about, I keep saying that if I ever go back for my PhD, I want to do my, my big thesis on how the heck did a commonwealth and a state grow up next to each other and be so fundamentally different. They're like two siblings. It's kind of like me and my brother. We are fundamentally different, even though we grew up together. You know what I mean? In Virginia, you have what's called the Dillon Rule. I call it, Mother May I. Mother, may I have a tree preservation ordinance? Please, please, please. And they have to go down to the state capitol in Virginia and get permission. Please, 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 can I have a tree ordinance? Maryland, complete opposite. You can do whatever you want at the local level as long as you implement the minimum state standards. So, I mean, I kind of had whiplash. I had, occupational whiplash when I went from working in Virginia where you had to justify everything. If I made a comment on a plan when I was doing plan review, I had to quote where in the code it gave me the authority to make that comment. Are you kidding me? I go over to Maryland and I'm supervising, same kinds of people, but they're looking at plans for everything from wetlands to noise, and in Virginia it was just trees. So I got to see the forest and the trees when I went to Maryland. But we're doing wetland stuff and we're doing like noise regulation, and I would say to one of the staff, where is this in the code? And they would go, well, in the subdivision ordinance it says that you should protect against noxious uses. That's what they considered legislative support for making a comment about noise abatement. I was like, all right then, where can I get started in stretching these rules and regulations? And you see how that's hard for the development community? Because they don't know what to expect. So in the last few years it came out in 2010, we spent 5 years rewriting the environmental codes in Prince George's. Soup to nuts. Everything. And now it's all written down. And now the developers hate it because it's all written down. And there's less flexibility. So they're like, we want flexibility, but we want you to write the regulations down, but we want flexibility. You see how that's hard to manage? So, that's part of what you have to deal with in getting the stuff built on the ground. And maybe some of the planners aren't as interested in, how that works, but you have to understand how permits work in order to do the policy planning that's way back here that says when that we value wetlands in a connected ecosystem. And then down here in the regulations it says wetlands shall have a minimum 25-foot buffer with slopes over 15% being added to that buffer up to 100 feet. So you see that connection between the policy says we value wetlands to here's how we implement it. Understand, wherever you end up on that spectrum, Adam, I'll bet you have to get permits for things, so you're kind of on that end, but you need to understand the policies and things that support that. Say you want to do something that's not in the code. Go find a policy that supports it and say, look, you said, accessory structures are an issue. That, an accessory structure is, I've got a detached garage behind my house. Can you do an apartment? in that garage. That's 2 dwelling units on one lot. You can't do that, okay? But that's how you get more people into a smaller space. So do you allow that? Do you not allow that? That's why I say you really need to understand that whole, it's my scale thing of the nesting dolls. Okay, so community scale. I love this graphic because it's got every little sustainability thing in it. It's, you got your wind, you got solar or something up here, you got all these satellites that are beaming stuff in, you're next to the water, you're growing food right here in downtown. It's spiritual, it's awesome, everybody's singing Kumbaya, it's beautiful. But can I tell you, to me, this is the most, is the level in the scale where you can make the most impact. Because it's like-minded people coming together and saying how we want our community to be. I'll tell you, Western Mass, my problem wasn't the Trumpsters, it was the Bernies. They, you know, up in Western Mass, it's if you don't recycle, if you don't do your composting, you know, you're not welcome here. And I love that. And they're creating community in a completely different way. You know, most things that happen in the community there, they don't charge admission for. And there's frequently food at these events. So like, you know, there'll be a folk singer or something will come to a community thing. And I've realized to stop asking, you know, how much does it cost? Oh, it's donations. Because there are people in the community who can't afford the $10 to come to see a concert, but they want it to be open to everyone. So that to me is kind of the place where sustainability can happen. Site scale, boy, this is a tough one. This is a shopping center in Bowie. It's right off of 197, Route 50 is right here, and 197. This is near where I used to live. And we tried to get this developer to do a more sustainable design, and because it wasn't required, the things that we were asking for were not required, they didn't have to do it. And it was such a missed opportunity. So what did I do? This was one of the first classes in 2007. I said, let's redo it. Let's redesign this to be a sustainable shopping center. So, and the first time we did this program, they did group projects at the end, and they redesigned this, and it was so fun. There's a green building, this is a green building right here, that has no pedestrian connection whatsoever to the shopping center. If you work there to go to lunch, they get in their cars. That's ridiculous to walk across the street. But I mean, this is 6 lanes, I think. Counting turning lanes, 8 lanes. Doesn't need to be that big. It's crazy. And you know, there were so many designs about. This is a typical strips. Well, it's not typical in that the parking's on the outside, and this is a still a street, but a 2-way street with angled parking. You know, this new downtown we're going to do, right? We're going to do a new downtown. Well, why don't you go to the old downtown that still exists and redo that instead of doing this out in the sprawly suburbs? So it is typical, though, that the second story, next time you go to a shopping center, look to see if that second story is fake. They're facades. They're not even used. Some of them are used for storage by those businesses, but they're fake. It's so that it doesn't look all, you know, so it's all one level. They do this fake second level. Why not put apartments in there? Let the people who work in the shopping center live there too. Get some nightlife. Well, what's the one thing standing in the way of that legally? Zoning, thank you. This is zoned for a shopping center. We can't have people living here. These are the building blocks we got to break down. We can't keep doing that. It's such a waste that that second story isn't used, you know, for something. Okay, pet peeves. All right, so then we go down to the site scale. This project I'm so proud of. This is the Forest Heights, Maryland Town Hall. And if you don't think one person can make a difference, this is all one person.
You mean landscape scale, or is that still site?
This is site. Well, site and landscape.
Okay.
Yeah, together. Well, even this is site scale, because we're not down to the landscape bed. That's how I use that term. So this site, this one woman, Jackie Goodall, was the mayor. And she said, I want to have the greenest town hall of all the towns. You know, there's 26 municipalities in Prince George's County. What a nightmare. 26 different local governments to deal with. Thank God they don't have planning and zoning authority. Ugh, that would be a nightmare, right? 27 different zoning ordinances? Ah, crazy. This woman went in and said, I want to demonstrate every single practice that you could do. So here's your pervious driveway there, Carolyn. So these are pervious parking lot spaces. She's got everything on here. There were some existing trees that they did better infiltration for the root zones. They used conservation landscaping techniques. The notebook's in the back. But just, you know, all these great plants. Bioretention, not a drop of water that falls on this site leaves this site. And this is very close to the Chesapeake Bay critical area. So all the more better, they're cleaner water, it's great. And it's a demonstration project so that people can come in and see what they did. Also on the site scale is the question of where do you build? And planners, I want you to really hone in on this. Where do you build? What are the decisions you should make? I forget what this is, but this is Tampa. And the blue areas are, you know, like predicted flooding currently, and the dark are sea level rise. Why are they still building there? It's crazy. Where you build is also a sustainability question. Not just what do you build on that site, but where does that site go? And then at the landscape scale, you write down, you're doing this bed. How can this bed fit in the larger scheme of things? You're down to that tiny little nesting doll now. Well, where's the runoff coming from? Can you capture that runoff? Can you make it cleaner? Can you slow it down at least? Can you plant some pollinating plants that make a connection from this little island to, oh, there's an island over here that it can connect with? Because, you know, we think everything is terrestrial, right? It's like, oh, if I didn't preserve a place for an animal to walk from here to here, then I haven't done my job? No. When we do green infrastructure planning, which I'll talk about a little bit, we considered that the Beltway was not a barrier. Beltway. Because birds and butterflies and, you know, various insects certainly could cross that 600-foot wide divide. So at that landscape scale, it's so important to figure out how you can benefit what's around you. And seeing it in context is so important. And there's my visual on the nesting dolls. Okay, so back to these slides. Here we go. And they're not moving anymore. Okay, we're going to look at that later. All right, let's pump through this last little section. You're almost there. We're going to throw some more definitions at you, see how those things settle. So now we're back to the 20,000 foot. We're back to the big nesting doll. So we went all the way down in scale, now we're coming back up again. Sustainable design is a design philosophy that seeks to maximize the quality of the built environment. Boy, there's a word that needs definition, right? Quality. What do we mean by quality of the built environment? While minimizing or eliminating negative impact to the natural environment. Do you find anything lacking in this definition?
Well, it didn't say anything about the future.
The future, right, it's only talking about this design in this location at this point in time. Yeah, I would expand that to say over time, or, you know, add more to it that, you know, it's not just having a negative impact on the environment. Is it only your environment on site? Because you could do a beautiful design on your site that totally dumps on the next property going down. That doesn't work.
It also doesn't aim to have a positive,
Right.
like have a building that has a positive impact.
Right, it's not
Yeah, right.
focusing on, it's the
Kind of-
absence of the negative is not the positive.
Yeah, it could say, well, enhancing the impact on township. If that would be possible.
Right, instead of just minimizing or eliminating, yeah. And when we talk about regenerative design, we're gonna talk about that some too. Not just sustainable, but are we getting it back to what it used to be? And how do we know what that is? Yeah, that's a good analysis. Oh, and there it is, regenerative design. So that's a system of technologies and strategies based on an understanding of the inner working of ecosystems that generates designs to regenerate rather than deplete underlying support systems, resources, blah, blah, blah. So we're not there yet. We're lucky to even be able to do green design. But if you're on a site where you can do a true regenerative design, what an opportunity that is. You know, the invasive plants stuff that you're going to be dealing with, you know, how do you get that back to, how do you regenerate what was there before? You might have to plant some large shade trees to get enough shade in there so that multiflora rose doesn't come back. One of my techniques on dealing with multiflora rose, pile sticks on top of it. I did it for 20 years on my property. Just pile sticks on top of it until it just can't stand it anymore. And you know what you've created? Beautiful wildlife habitat. Because they love that, especially for small birds, they like to get up under there and, you know, simple. So how do we get to regenerative design? You know, I keep saying, I want you to think, you know, far in the future. That's really the next phase of this profession, I think, is that everything needs to be regenerative, not just how are we going to deal with things. Now that's really hard. This office building has gone up in the last year. It was a big hole in the ground last year. How could that contribute to a regenerative design? Boy, I don't know. It's pretty tough. 100% impervious surface replaced by 100% impervious surface. So maybe what they have is a requirement to preserve land somewhere else. Or they could do a green roof. Very different architectural designs because it's got to support all that. We did, I was so mad at the University of Maryland. They wanted to build more housing for their students, and they started buying up properties that were between Paint Branch and US 1. And they're not very deep properties. So they said, well, you know what, we have to go into that stream buffer because this is just not a deep enough property. And we fought and we argued and we fought and we argued, and they said, you know, this is our design, we're not changing it. And I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to capture rainwater on the roof of that building, and you're going to reuse that rainwater. I had no authority to say that. But this is how negotiation happens, right? They were going to impact the buffer. When they impact the buffer, everything's negotiable, and they say, you know, oh well. I mean, at one point they were building right up to the